What's up, everyone? It's your girl Nija, and you are now tuned into Our Music is Ours. Today, we're going to be talking about Drake. It's the end of an era, so everyone is coming up with these decade end lists to highlight the best artists, songs, albums, performances, album cover art of the last 10 years. And Drake has found his name at the top of many of these lists. Most importantly, he's been crowned the Artist of the Decade. This is certainly a well-deserved feat for him, as he is one of the most dominant streaming forces in the industry today. He has released an innumerable amount of chart-topping singles, albums, features, and done multiple high-grossing tours. Recently, he went on Rap Radar to discuss this honor and reflect on the past decade. He also controversially discussed his lack of acceptance by the Black American hip-hop community.
Sometimes I do feel like sometimes I don't feel celebrated when I know maybe somebody else would be celebrated for those accomplishments, I don't feel like people say when Drake is the artist of the decade, I don't think anybody says, wow, a black artist is the artist of the decade. I don't think anybody says that, really. I never heard anybody say that in the last few weeks. And I associate I associate myself as a black man. So for me, it's sometimes it's something that I just acknowledge and I just keep it moving. But like I said, I feel like if the situation was different, I feel like maybe some of the massive accomplishments and accolades that we've conquered on behalf of all of us, not just me. It's not like it's for all of us, right? Just like how excited I am when anybody else in our space does something great, of course, there's a part of me that wishes that I was celebrated a little more, but who wants to listen to me cry about being celebrated?
This prompts us to question, is Drake not accepted by the Black hip-hop community? In my opinion, I don't feel that he hasn't been embraced, given his dominance on urban radio. If you listen to Power 105.1, that's the Breakfast Club in the tri-state area, you'll hear his songs constantly in rotation. Currently, it's the songs that he's featured on, No Guidance and Sicko Mode. You hear those songs pretty much like almost every 30 minutes, it seems. And Power 105.1 is just one station, but it's one of the biggest stations, and the songs that play on that particular station are reflective of the songs that are being played on lesser known, smaller urban radio stations across the country. So it's unfair for him to say that he doesn't have that support when he clearly does. And you don't get to become one of the biggest artists in the world without having Black people's support in some way. Like, Black people either serve as the foundation for your creativity, or they're involved in some way, shape, or form. They are your writers, they are your producers, they are, your vocal producers. Like, Black people always have a hand in the success of all of the greats, and Drake he's no exception. Lastly, Black people, we determine what's cool and what isn't. It's because we, thought that this kid from Degrassi, he had some potential, he had some skill. It's because we felt that way that he's been able to amass the amount of success that he has today. So personally, I don't feel like Drake's feelings are true, but that doesn't negate his perception. I feel like when he says that, maybe he didn't necessarily explain himself. I'm wondering if he's maybe talking about feeling like he hasn't been inducted into the hip-hop pantheon of the greats alongside people like Jay-Z and P. Diddy and Nas and Biggie and Tupac, like all of the greats dead or alive. I feel like he maybe feels like he hasn't been embraced into that fold of Black excellence, and so maybe he's, kind of holding his issues with, those elite few onto the entire community, which I feel like is super unfair. This argument also makes us question, one, if we do believe that Drake is not as accepted or hasn't been accepted by the Black hip hop community, then why has J. Cole been more accepted by that community than him, despite them coming from similar racial backgrounds? And so when I heard Drake make these claims and I started doing my research and just kind of seeing other people's opinions on this, I noticed that a lot of people brought J. Cole in the fold for the reasons that I mentioned before, and it makes total sense. They're both biracial with white moms and black dads. Both of their fathers weren't really around. J. Cole's father completely abandoned him and his mom. Drake's dad was around, he was a pop-up part-time daddy. Though Drake did, spend some summers in Tennessee with his father and Black side, however, both artists grew up primarily around their white family. So what's the reasoning for why they are treated differently if, this is true? So I've, come up with a few reasons that I can think of. And I think number one would be othering based on nationality. So Drake is Canadian while J. Cole is American. And so J. Cole identifies as a Black American. So I feel like just off the strength of that, he's going to have an easier time being embraced by this community because he's, partially of this community. Whereas, Drake, he is Canadian, though his father is a Black American. And we've definitely seen within the Black community othering that goes on between various, ethnic groups. We've seen, Black Americans treat, different people from various African countries certain ways. We've seen people, various West Indian, people treating, other West Indian people a certain way, or maybe other, Black Americans, certain ways. So we've seen like intraracial issues within our community, and it's possible that that's also playing out, within the Black hip hop community, this kind of othering of Drake because he's not a part of the Black American community. And we've also, seen many memes of Drake being made, making fun of him for being nice and, making fun of his Canadian roots because Canadians are perceived to be super nice and polite. And we've seen Drake at times play into those stereotypes. So I feel like, that's definitely plausible. So number two, another reason that I can think of is class. So Drake grew up middle class. He never really had to struggle financially. His socioeconomic status enabled him with access to opportunities that I feel people from similar households, so single parent homes, they might not have had those same opportunities because of, maybe being a part of a lower socioeconomic status. And J. Cole, on the other hand, he grew up working class. So coupling that with the fact that he grew up in a single parent home, his situation, his home situation, I feel is, very similar to a lot of, to a sizable population of Black Americans who I feel like maybe are able to more easily relate to J. Cole. And I also feel like the fact that J. Cole went to college and he struggled with student loans, I feel like that just kind of adds into his relatability to Black Americans, them being able to potentially relate to being, first generation college students, although I know that that's not necessarily exclusive to Black Americans, but I'm just kind of giving some possible reasonings that I could see for this disconnect that may or may not exist between Drake and the Black hip hop community. And also, I just want to speak again on the class part that I mentioned. I don't think that class is the end-all be-all because there are several big hip-hop artists who grew up middle class. Like, struggling is not a requirement in hip-hop anymore. So I never understand why people feel the need to fake it because it's completely unnecessary. Artists like Common and Kanye West and Chance the Rapper, these are people who grew up in homes with like highly educated parents, and they grew up not having to struggle, and they all never had to pretend to be anything they were not to achieve success. And none had issues with being embraced by the Black hip hop community. I mean, I'll say Kanye West did have some slight issues, but that was more so to do with like his fashion and his style of dress, rather than his rap skills. But other than that, I feel like he had, no issue with being embraced because the talent just spoke for itself. And I feel like in hip hop, like, talent is everything. If you have it, like, they're gonna embrace you. And I feel like the Black hip hop community has embraced Drake, although they may feel he's a little more pop than hip hop. But hey, that's an argument worth having. Like, it's a fair assessment. The last reason that I can think of is potentially just their differing styles of music. So Drake's music is more inward focused. He talks about his own unique experiences, and there's nothing wrong with that. I feel like he's never attempted to be the voice of anyone else except for himself. And Drake also has an insatiable thirst for universal commercial success, and because of that, I feel he stays mute on issues impacting Black communities globally as to not alienate any of his fans, whereas I feel J. Cole's music is more outward focused. He tries to be a voice for the marginalized. He speaks about the struggles of being Black in America and in the world at large, both in his music and interviews. And J. Cole makes music because he feels he has a message that people need to hear. So he says what he wants and doesn't really care like what people think or how people are going to receive the message that he, feels so passionately about, and he just so happens to be successful doing so. Not everyone, can make the kind of rap that J. Cole makes and be successful, but he and Kendrick Lamar are two who have been able to. The Black hip-hop community might be more inclined to accept J. Cole because they see that he's willing to threaten his success by speaking out about issues that plague the Black community without any care of alienating non-Black fans. And so, in the end all be all, I think Drake's lack of acceptance by the American Black community has a lot to do with the fact that he's able to capitalize off of his adjacencies when it's convenient. He can lean on his Blackness creatively while leaning on his whiteness and Jewish heritage when it's advantageous to him. Whereas J. Cole, he doesn't use his white heritage to his advantage, but doesn't deny that it may play a role in his success. And I don't think that Drake has owned his privilege as a light-skinned Black man in the way that J. Cole has. Drake wants to reap all the benefits of being in this gray area, of being Black enough for Black people and white enough for white people, while complaining about Black people not embracing him when most Black people can't straddle the fence like he can. And that's, no fault of his own, but, I think he can't be mad at some of his peers for feeling a certain way about him, given, some of the advantages that he has over them. But ultimately, I just don't see Drake not being embraced by the Black hip hop community. That's not how I'm perceiving the situation, just based off of the sheer amount of commercial and crossover success he has. These are my thoughts on, this topic regarding Drake. I'm curious to know what your thoughts are. Please comment down below. Thanks. Bye.